I don't normally do 2 entries a day, but I just got in an email and I want to share it with you because it relates directly to what my earlier entry talked about. So you may recall I mentioned in passing that there was actually one scholarly journal that was considering my paper regarding Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol. And that came about because among the 600 or so people, professors, whom I emailed with a link to this paper, a few of them were editors, incidentally. And this particular one thought that I was submitting the paper to them, to their journal. And I wrote back and explained that no, I was just bringing it to her attention as a professor and not intending to submit it to the journals for the reasons that I gave this morning, that I know that it's like Charlie Brown and Lucy and the football, and that there's no possible way that they're ever going to publish my paper. However, this editor wrote me back after an extended period of time, however long it was, fairly recently, and said that they would consider it, because I said, you're welcome to if you want, knowing darn well that they wouldn't publish it. And they said, no, they'll rest assured we'll give it full consideration or something like that. I don't have the exact wording in front of me. Well, just a little bit ago, after I had posted the previous entry, I got my response, my rejection letter. So what I'm going to do is read you the rejection letter, and then I'm going to read you my response. And that's about it. I might comment a little bit, but basically that's going to be it. So here we have, I won't give the name of the journal. Dear Mr. Sakellarios, I write regarding the essay you recently submitted. No, she calls it an essay. I write regarding the essay you recently submitted to Victorian Studies, quote, evidence that A Christmas Carol was originally written by Matthew Franklin Whittier and Abby Poy and Whittier rather than by Charles Dickens. I am sorry to have to tell you that we will not pursue publication. Because we are an academic journal, excuse me, I'll have to edit that out, that's the name of the journal, is not a suitable venue for work of such a speculative nature. Almost no scholarship is cited in the scant bibliography, but this is because the essay is not scholarly in nature. Name of the journal is a scholarly evidence-based publication. The number of rhetorical fallacies here also bears some scrutiny, parentheses, if this then that, for instance. She has to explain what a rhetorical fallacy is to me, as does the 23,450 word count of this essay. And she says our preferred limit, as stated on our website and elsewhere, is 9,000. Well, I wasn't submitting it in the first place, so I really don't care. But thank you for thinking of name journal. We, too, are fans of Dickens and other 19th century writers. We hope that you enjoy our journal, and we wish you the best. Well, I'm not a fan of Dickens at all. I think he was an absolute scoundrel. But I get the feeling I'm dealing with more than one person here. So that person that wrote me is probably not the person that initially wrote back, and so on. Well, here I'm writing back, and, it's going to some poor intern or somebody that had the job of sending the letter. And I just wrote back to them. Yes, I have read the attached letter. This is my response. I cannot believe anyone could read this paper and say that it is not, quote, evidence-based. The entire paper is evidence-based, and some of that evidence is given in graphic form, meaning, close-up shots of Dickens' handwritten manuscript, which clearly show that he was dumbing down somebody else's work spiritually and so on. Some of my conclusions are based on logic, and it is sound logic. There are no rhetorical fallacies. I do cite scholarship, as for example, Professor John Bowen's work, but not heavily, because this is an entirely new discovery and there is very little relevant scholarship to cite. To my knowledge, no scholar has ever suggested that Charles Dickens was not the original author of A Christmas Carol, and only Professor Natalie McKnight, again to my knowledge, has suggested that any other author's works influenced it. Who exactly should I be citing and presenting evidence that no one else has ever found? Indeed, the paper is quite long. Given that I have discovered that Charles Dickens did not write the carol, and that I must make a thorough case, that couldn't be helped. I refused to tie one hand behind my back by withholding any portion of the evidence. I fully support, name of journal, right to reject any paper for any reason, but the reasons cited here are irrational, and I would say they are based entirely on prejudice. Best regards, Stephen. Now, my first response was to be angry. My second response was to feel sorry for them because they had a chance to scoop the entire world with an outrageous discovery, which is real, quite real, that Charles Dickens did not write A Christmas Carol and pretended all his life that he had. She, as much as says that they're a fan of Dickens, and that's why she reacted the way she did, out of emotion and not out of logic. This is not a logical response. I'm not wrong. I present a lot of evidence in this paper and a fair amount of logic, and as I said, it's sound logic. There are some smoking guns in this article or paper, whatever you want to call it. It is not scholarly in the sense of tedious scholarship, the kind that cites 100 different people and, wrangles over how many angels can fit on the head of a pin, and they basically don't have anything new to say, but they cite a whole bunch of people, and like it's like law. It's like the law when they're citing, precedent cases. That's scholarship to them. That's not. I don't care what scholarship is. I care about the truth. And they blew it because they had the opportunity to premiere, to scoop the entire rest of the academic world with this discovery, and they blew it. Well, and then I think finally I end up with the realization of just how far I have to go, how wide the gulf really is between getting this information out in a way that people will understand it and the wall of prejudice that I'm up against and that is against me. Again, it's the percentage who can understand this, who's open-minded enough to understand this, who is so much dedicated to the truth that they're prepared to accept it when it comes to them, however painful, is so small compared to the percentage who will react in the way that this person reacted. The prejudice against what I'm doing is so huge. I've underestimated the ignorance that I'm up against. It's not me. It's not that she's right. I did my homework. I did my homework for years to be sure that I was right. I checked all the angles, and there's nothing wrong with my logic. So it's interesting. Denial has always fascinated me as someone who's got a degree in counseling and has a particular interest in psychology. The phenomenon of denial is just fascinating. Presumably, this has to be an intelligent person, probably way above average intelligence. This is someone who's studied Charles Dickens. She knows darn well that Charles Dickens has now been proven to have attempted to put his faithful wife, Catherine, into an insane asylum by lying about her sanity. Basically, he had an affair for years, and whenever she would get freaked out about it, he would say she was crazy. That's the pattern. I have experienced that myself on the receiving end. I know exactly how it feels like and how it's crazy making for someone who you love to be telling you a lie of that magnitude. See? So if she was crazy, he had made her crazy, but she wasn't crazy. He was lying to try to get her put into this awful institution so he could have his affair with impunity. That's an asshole. He could not possibly have written A Christmas Carol. She knows this every bit as well as I do. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So this is the extent to which blind fandom will go in the name of academia. See? It's not rational. It's not fair-minded. It's not rational, as I said to her in the letter. Whether I'll get a response or not, I don't know. I probably will try to discipline myself not to answer it. But that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to read that letter and my response and a couple comments, and I'm done.